Hi, I'm Jen, and I'll be sharing 20 years worth of data secrets.
And I'm Kevin, and from my perspective as a educational specialist and consultant, I'll be helping her to do that. And together we'll
Bring you for the love of data. Kevin, when a client asks for data, did you know that you actually have two choices? You're going to give them what they ask for, or you're going to give them what you feel they need.
terrible choices. Yeah, I know, because they're both like somebody wins, somebody loses. It seems like they don't really want what they asked for. I don't know. How did you resolve that?
Do you know what? There's actually a third choice. You can do both. And this is exactly what this story is all about. It actually has very little to do with data, although we are going to show a fair bit of data. It goes into an approach of working with your clients. And in this case, the client was a new head of human resources at the City of Toronto. His name was Bruce. Really exciting because Bruce was one of the very few data savvy. He had a data request. Let's walk through this data request and how it pans out because we did both in this scenario of the two options, but ultimately there's three. What Bruce asked for was a labor productivity index.
I can see he was a sophisticated kind of person because that is it's a complex ratio, right?
Uh, yeah, it's pretty complex. When we looked it up in real life, how you compute it is you get the output that you're generating, how many widgets did you create or what have you, and you divide it by how many people it took to create that widget in your company. Or another way to compute it is the number of widgets or output divided by hours worked. This is a fairly complex something to compute. And guess what? We'd never been asked for this type of computation in data reporting where I worked in the past 15 years before this gentleman got here. So I did go back and say, what do you want this for? And so when I got the explanation, guess what happened? I thought, I don't think this is what's really going to help him. And so what do I do? So back to this, how we kick this off, someone has an ask, you have two choices, ultimately three. Give them what you asked for. Guess what? We exactly went ahead and gave this person what they asked for. So let's take a look at what happens when you are doing that. When you're looking at how many widgets did we put out there, a question to ask is, are you including all staff? Are you including executives? Are you including managers, supervisors, or only those that actually had a hand in delivering the stat? It's not as simple as it looks anymore. Also, some staff don't work the same amount of time. Like you have full time staff, you have part time staff, you have staff that only work 3 days a week. How do you compute that? And some that only work 2 hours a day. It's still not that simple. And finally, when you nitpick, include this, don't include that, adjust this accordingly, do an index on that, how do you compare to other organizations to know are you stellar or not? So it's a little bit complicated, and so perhaps that's why we never got asked for it before. However, this is what we did get asked for. So I promise you, we did produce this, and you'll see that a little later. So when I look at the two options I have, give him what he asked for, give Bruce what he wants, or give him what you think he should have. Here's a little bit of what we thought would be helpful to Bruce. You need to understand the workforce that is working on this productivity. So, one iteration of doing that is looking at the workforce broken down by union. So, we have this is actually City of Toronto stats, pull off the internet factual stats.
Out of that whole workforce, only 7,000 people are non-union. Wow.
Which is less than 20% of the workforce. So 80 plus percent is unionized. And so, yes, we're very heavily unionized. This is what we want to bring to this leader's attention. I know he knows it's a heavily unionized workforce, but how heavily unionized? Plus, it's not just one union. There are a number of unions that work in this workforce. So he did not ask for this. So option two, do you give them what they asked for? Do you give them what they need, feel they need? So we did both. We did option three. We gave them both. So we are giving him this. And is that good enough? In my opinion, no. So we're going to look at the same workforce, but now we're breaking it down by status. So one complexity is we're heavily unionized. A second complexity is that we have people of different status. So what's the status? You'll see it's permanent employees, temporary employees, part-time employees. They don't work a full workday or a full week. And recreation workers. We're a government organization that throws a lot of recreation programs, especially during the summer. We have 12,000 that pop in and out at different points of the time in the year. And so there you have it. I think it's very important, especially for a new person coming on board to lead the whole organization in human resources, to know this. So this made it on. The big secret is a second worksheet. The first worksheet is exactly what he asked for. Let me show you what the labor productivity index looks like for HR. What is the labor output for HR? We have over 400 HR staff, 434. We have the employee count, and we just divide one over the other. And each HR staff services 101 employees. Kevin, I have to tell you the sidebar story here. When we go to conferences and conventions, us at the City of Toronto and HR, well, common question is, how many staff do you have in HR there at the City of Toronto? So I truthfully say over 400, and this is what happens, like one
Because they
tax
come from medium or small organizations and they have like 7 or 15. Uh-huh.
exactly. And so they're like, my tax-paying dollars are paying for over 400 staff. I'm a data person with, well, how many HR people do you have? And exactly as you said, Kevin, 10, 20. And then I say, oh, wow. Well, how many employees do you service? How many employees do you have? And they'll say, well, 2,000. And I'll say, well, we have 400 HR staff and we service 40,000. And they'll say, oh, and it's done. And so here's the that's ultimately this labor productivity computation. We need to do it for their organization and ours and compare it. So are we done? Well, no, because of course, remember those previous charts. I'm going to show Bruce a breakdown of HR, not by union affiliation, because HR is all non union. So rather, I'm still going to give him a count of HR staff by status because he needs to know of that 101 per employee. We've included hundreds, let's say 30 HR staff that only work part time. They only
Hmm.
work half a day. So those 30 are actually equal to 15 HR staff. So our stack goes even higher. He needs to be aware of all those nuances. I also included in this scenario, which I haven't shown here because we want to get on with this sharing, is a breakdown by position because I want Bruce to remember he's the executive director. He doesn't have hands on delivering per se on a day to day. We've got a number of directors, managers, senior consultants, etc. So he might want to come back and say, Genevieve, recompute this number and take these people out. He has that door open now. I also do a little box of, remember, we have 4 different big unions, another box shares, and we have 9 different collective agreements. That's actually factual. Sorry, 8.
So how many of that 400 staff would actually be focused on sort of union specific issues like our people who are good at labor relations?
Over 100. Oh, yeah. If for an organization that has very little unionized workforce, comparing with them is not a good idea for exactly that reason. That's an excellent question, Kevin. So these are things that I think is very important for our leader to be aware of and at the forefront. However, what was his basic question? Tell me the labor productivity index. And Kevin, that's pretty much our story for today. Option one You could have gave that leader just this last slide's output and you're done. And did you do anything wrong? No. However, the big data secret is tackle these requests with a win-win approach. So, Kevin, I know you're the master of these concepts, having taught them, uh, and I have never taught any of them, but I'm going to take a quick stab at a layman definition of win-win and then over to you. So, what does win-win mean to me? It means you're not wrong. And it also means I'm not wrong. It means we're both right. And so I'm going to give you in worksheet number one, we call this the two worksheet concept on my team. Worksheet number one, you always give the client what they ask for. Worksheet number two, you give the client what you feel would be beneficial to what they're trying to achieve. And to me, that's a win-win approach. You're right and I'm right. And you get the best of both worlds.
The only thing I'll say is that win-win relationships survive over the long run. Whereas if you somehow make the boss wrong by suggesting they should have asked for something else, you seem to be doing it in a very subtle way that actually adds to what they were thinking. And I can tell by knowing you that you would have done it in a very respectful way. So they felt like, well, they win by learning something new, and you win by getting their respect. And what was the outcome of actually doing this with this boss? Did they make note of what you said, or did they reject it and say, I don't want it complicated? What turned out?
Well, excellent question again, Kevin. Do you know what happens is not just with Bruce, but with all clients that we work in this manner, they refrain from saying, Genevieve, here's what I'd like. Rather, it transitions into, Genevieve, here's what I'm trying to achieve or look at. What would you recommend? So it was actually magical. And if we look at ending this with our key secrets, so over to that, and over to you, Kevin, our key secrets are.
If you want to have a really effective relationship with your senior players, it's got to be a win-win. So no loss of face in public where you say, you want that? That won't do it. No, say, great, I can give you what you've asked for. And if you're willing, would you take a look at these things too? And so it's a teaching aspect to it, a growing aspect, and that's a win-win. You get to be the expert. The boss still gets to direct you towards where they want you to go, and hopefully finds a good answer to their original question. And I love this idea of two worksheets. Here's what you asked for. And if you've got some time, could you take a look at this? A little more complicated, good secret.
It was beautiful. What in fact actually happened was Bruce took the information that we gave him, put it in this council report he was preparing. He decided, he was so impressed, I guess, that he actually put our name as a reference, every single member of my team, to say huge thanks to all these people for the excellent data. That never happens, Kevin. Council reports are very clear, concise, factual. They never put any extra verbiage on there at all. And for him to do that, that was huge. And we never forgot it. That's one of the outcomes of win-win.
That was the win for you, and the win for the senior executive was that they actually learned and had a better understanding of how they could use you in the future.
Sounds simple, sounds easy, sounds like a very logical way to do business. What I promise you, what I've seen is this normally does not happen. When you're faced with the option of give the option one, give them what they ask for, option two, give them what you feel they need, it stops at option one. They just jump on, I just want to give the people what they ask for. I promise you a better, more masterful approach with an incredible outcome is to choose to do both. Win-win.